demonstrating how to edit whoops, I made a mistake. Let me try that again. Whoops, wrong note. Play the right note. What I'm doing here is demonstrating that performers are trying to act out an example of how a performer might make a mistake, especially if they're sight reading music first glance for first time through something. Some people can play perhaps things perfectly every time, but we're not all Karen Carpenter. She had that skill supposedly. So if you're a sight reader or even practiced, you're still going to make mistakes on occasion. And yes, you can go back and practice for 3 more months the same piece, and you'll get better at it. Maybe you won't make as many mistakes, or you won't make any mistakes if you practice long enough. Segovia would practice for 40 years, and maybe there never was a mistake after that point. But that's a big investment of time. Then you can go ahead and also hire sound engineers for $50 or $100 an hour, pay them to correct the mistakes. You have to also spend time communicating with them if you're going to be there telling them what to do. If you're not, you have to rely on their judgment. So I'm not saying don't use professional or sound engineers at $50 to $100 an hour. That's fine. But if you're interested in Shotcut, you're probably more like myself, a self-proclaimed amateur who would like to come up with a reasonably well-played performance, or at least sounding like a reasonably well-played performance. And so you don't want to necessarily put all that money into having a sound engineer, and you may want to do your edits yourself. And this video is about transitions and edits. I think it's I know how I was a year ago. I wasn't nearly as good at editing transitions and edits, so I have something I could teach myself if I could have made this video and sent it back in time so I could watch it. And I'm going to fade out soon, so you don't get bored with me, and you can watch my videos. First I'll show you the sound cuts, how to take out a single note. Now I've kind of explained part of what I'm doing here, who it's for, pitched toward the more amateur type. You're not necessarily trying to, sell CDs. So you're going to do it yourself, learn how to do sound editing yourself. It's not that hard to do, and takes a little investment of time, but it's a lot less time than it's going to take for you to perfect the piece. So, there's a cost-effectiveness issue here. But when you perform, and you may mess up, you may want to go back and redo the section, or redo the entire piece if you think you can do it perfectly, next time through. Or you can do what I sometimes do, just repeat the note, and then when you edit it, just take out that note, go back and remove it. A note can be, a quarter second or something. You won't necessarily see it. So when you take it out, it's easy to do. Talking about the different ways to do it. But so there's a performance side to deciding, and if you're doing your own video editing, there's an advantage there. When it comes to the type of editing you do, there are multiple types, but the 2 main types are cuts with sort of like scissors. You just snap out that portion if it's a wrong note, or passage. Or you can do transitions. One of the complications with cutting is you're occasionally left with, or often left with, audio drops and pops and clicks. Difficult to remove if at all possible. Shotcut's not professional software, it's open source, but I've seen professional software and it doesn't necessarily do a lot better. So my rule is cut out the note if you can with and I'm going to show you on the videos I'll fade to soon, and see if you can avoid an audio pop. If that fails, then go ahead and do it as a transition instead. It'll leave a little waving in the video, but if you fall upon the right combination of things and the computer's doing it the right way, then it'll sound good that way as a fallback. Now, if you're, instead of a wrong note, if you're trying to fix the rhythm because you have a little bit of hesitation or delay in what you've done, it's probably better to do it with a transition instead. Easy to fix the rhythm and try to match up the sound peaks so they're about the same distance. That way there is no audio pop as much to worry about with doing the transition. So I'm going to fade now to my videos. First I'm going to do a video, a fade into the how to do the cut the note out with the scissors and Shotcut, and then after that I'm going to do some videos on the sound transition idea. And please forgive my using the wrong word. I refer to the performance I did as a Beatles melody instead of medley. So I thought I would do this live and edit my own video and show you how to do it. So the video you're watching I would be editing right at that moment, but I don't have the software to do that, so I'm not going to do that. It would just be for fun anyway. So ignore the fact that I said melody instead of medley, and that way I won't have to redo or splice in a different word. So, okay, I'm going to fade now, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. Demonstrating how to cut a bad note is done by way of example. Every situation is a little bit unique. What I just did seemed to have worked pretty well, so I'm going to show this one. First I'm going to undo it over here, what I successfully did, and go back, and then I'm going to redo it so I can show you the sound. This is the sound I ended up with. Let me show you that first. Try it. Turn up the volume. All right, try it again. So when you're editing, you want to look at the audio and the video. Audio is presumably primary if you care about well-played performance. Got a little bit of an audio drop right at that spot. Wait, stop it. Go back. There's a little bit of an audio drop there. So you get a slight pop. That can be avoided too. Transitions seem to work better. This is a relatively minor audio drop now. Sometimes when the computer processes it, when you export from Shotcut, it'll change it. It'll make it worse or better. It's hard to predict, so sometimes you have to do it several times. That time when it played it, it seemed to play it more efficiently. I didn't hear the audio drop so much, but it drops there and it raises there. So I'm going to show you, let me show you the cutting that note out, what it looks like on the video. You can watch the fingers, and let me go back a little ways. So watch the fingers and you'll see something right there. I'll do it again, although you can back up your the recording of what I'm giving you here. So taking my time on this because it's important. All right, when we get to the spot right here. So a little bit of a jerk motion in the fingers. You can see it. You know, the professional's not going to want that in their video. A well-played amateur, or an amateur who's interested in well-played performances may be satisfied with that, may think that's well-played. So given that, if this is the kind of thing you want to create here, let's go back and I'll show you how I did that. And the way we're going to do that is undo up on the top for Shotcut, undo the changes I made there. All right, first let's get the counter in the right spot, more or less, so we don't deviate from that. Now I'm going to undo that spot. Okay, I undid it, took out, that's what I deleted. Okay, that's the wrong note. Now I'll play the wrong note after I delete it 2 more times to take out the split. So I'm going to undo 2 more times. Undo once, undo twice. Okay, that is where the wrong note is. Now I'm going to play that wrong note for you. It's duplicated. I performed it here, and I made a mistake, wrong note, so I redid it when I was performing. So that's one advantage of when a performer does his own editing. Let's play it, and you'll hear it. Now, so I repeated it. It's a bad note, I repeated it, played it twice. Okay, now we want to take that out. How do you take that out efficiently is the question. This we're talking, you know, a quarter of a second, less than that, tenth of a second, something like that, eighth of a second in that range. And the trick is you've got a similar peak, so the wrong note is a similar attack to the right note. You want the wrong note out, and to avoid the audio pop, some people on the internet, for whatever reason, recommend that you put the cut near the attack, and the problem is that creates a big pop and you disguise it with a strong attack. Better, if it works, is to cut away from the attack over here so you get less of a pop. That's what I've discovered. And you want to match the level of where you cut there to the level of where you cut here, so that helps the audio drop not be as good. And to keep the rhythm correct, you want to have the distance between the cut there approximately equal to the distance to the cut there, unless you're trying to change the rhythm. So let's go ahead and I'll redo one of the cuts that I made. Here's the first one. Okay. Now you see I cut it away from the attack of the correct note. All right, that's the right spot to put it. We're not dealing with transitions here. Transitions are another complexity we'll get into later. Now I'm going to redo the second split. Okay, now notice I put it at approximately the same level. You can't be exactly the same level. This level is not the same as that level, where the part that's remaining. So you have an audio drop and it's going to come back at a slightly different level, but not too bad. That helps avoid the pop, it seems to. And the other thing for the rhythm is I got approximately the same distance between the attack here and the attack there. So this note, when it comes out, will not change the rhythm. Unless you want to change the rhythm, then you've got to do it differently. So that is the where I put the splice cuts, and then you simply hit the scissors over there and cut it out. Let me do that now with the redo. Since I did it before, I'm just redoing it. And I cut it out, and that note is gone. And we'll go back and listen to it one more time. See how it turned out. You heard the bad one. Come on. There. All right. We'll be coming up in a second. So pretty smooth, not perfect. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for a well-played performance, which you can achieve with editing a wrong note out. And as you're performing, you make a wrong note, just play it right again, keep the rhythm going, go back a note or go back a phrase, go back a whole section. If you do sections, it's a little easier to do all this stuff. I'll demonstrate transitions later. Thank you. Another example of cutting. This strategy I used here was a little bit different than the other one, so I wanted to show it to you. As I mentioned, every situation is unique, and sometimes you have to do it several times. What difference I had here was, let me undo it to show you the wave without the lines. So there. Now, this time, when you cut, you don't want the wave that's left to go down and then up. That also creates a pop problem. So I tried doing it the same way that I mentioned before, getting it away from the attack, and because it's coming down right before the attack, it doesn't work as well. It creates a pop that doesn't sound right. You need the pop now with the attack. What transitional sound is left over, you can hide with the attack. So what you want to do in this case, since it's sloping down, is get the cut line right at the bottom. And similarly, when you're cutting on this side, you want to get around about the same level and at the bottom as it works out there. So let me redo it twice, and I'll show you what I did. Cut it there. That's avoids that little hook and well, it's essentially at the attack is where the line is drawn. Let me show you the other one. Okay, that one also essentially at the attack. Now, before I remove it and show you how it sounds, let me show you with the bad note in there. I'll play it. Let's play it once here. There's already a little bit of a pop sound for whatever reason, perhaps because I already put those cuts in there, splitted playhead. Sometimes that seems to create a pop in itself, so if you remove those, it won't be there, but the wrong note is what I'm concentrating on here. So let's go back and listen to it one more time with the wrong note. Okay, so I'm going to take that out. It's duplicated again in my performance of it, and now to take it out, let's just redo. I'm in the redo because I've already cut it. So redo it, and it's out. Now let's hear how it sounds with that removed. If you listen closely, you'll hear a little bit of pop at the point of attack, which is the strategy recommended typically when I see it on the internet. So it's just a little bit of a pop that you can't quite really hear, goes with the note. So it's not, you know, we don't have perfection. So, as I mentioned, different strategies for different situations. Transitions can be tricky to line things up well. I have done a transition here that seemed to work. As I've mentioned in the case of cutting, transition when you get to the final export on Shotcut, sometimes it doesn't come out quite as good as it looks when you're doing it here. I have already done the transition. It seemed to work well, and now since it worked well, I undid with the undo button. I took it out, and now I want to show you how I did it, and then I'll redo it and show you. First of all, let's look at the raw data I started with. This is an instrumental from All My Love in the Beatles song, and so let's listen to the two notes. Okay, that's the part I want to leave in, and I repeated it there. I want to put those two together. So all my lovin', and let's do it one more time so you see what I'm trying to do. I've got a little bit of this song here, and then it's repeated over there, and I want to transition them together. Let's listen. So that note I want to take out. These notes are the same as that note and that note. So I want to merge them together by way of transition rather than cut this out. Sometimes that works out smoother. Sometimes it doesn't. But in this particular case, it seemed to have worked quite well. So what I have to do is just push these two notes over and line them up with those two notes. Let me do it by way of the redo and show you what I've done. The first redo was a split there because of this note I don't want, and so I'm taking that part out. Sometimes you want to leave it in, actually, and it'll show up over here. The reason is that with the transition, you get it's fading in the new stuff, it's fading out the old stuff. So sometimes it actually sounds better to leave a bad note in because it's being faded out. And by the time you get to the notes you want, they're louder because it's being faded in. But in this case, it seemed to work better to take that note out. So I split it out. And let me redo that split. Now I'm going to erase it. And then I moved it over here. Okay, so let me show you where I'm at now with those two notes. So you heard the notes twice. Now I'm going to just push it over and line that top attack and that top attack of those two notes with those. And I'm going to do it by way of redo because I've already, well, I could show you. Let me just show you and do it again, not redo it. And just push them over like this. Line up those two notes right there. Let go. Now you've got a little transition here. Let's hear how it sounds. Go back just a little bit further. Okay, play that one more time for you. So I merged the two notes together by way of a transition. If you watch the video, you can see some waving, but a lot of people don't care. They think it looks good to have some video effects that way. If you watch down here, you can see a little bit of jiggling and all that. So, okay, now I'm going to show you a transition to fix the rhythm a little bit in this same song. I think the delay right here is a little longer than seems right for the fit of the sound, so let's listen to it. A little bit of hesitation there I don't want. So one way to fix a hesitation is by way of a transition. This seems to be easier than other types. I'm making editing corrections for relatively minor problems, but it's good to have other people, as I mentioned, look at what you're doing to say, wait a minute, that's not an error. But I'm going to change it here. So I split it, and I'm going to move it over not too far. Try to get the rhythms of the peaks a little bit more consistent, so I don't have a delay there. That creates a transition. Let's listen to it. So almost imperceptible sound, at least right now. And looking at the video, almost imperceptible on the video. I didn't move much. Another example of the idea of changing the rhythm a little bit is I'm creating a melody here, and I'm pasting one song into another, and this song, the ending song, tapers off with the beautiful overtones that a guitar has, and unfortunately I will cut those out. I've got other examples of people listening to the overtones, so I don't want that, but I'm trying to do a melody, so go immediately into the next song by way of a transition. So I'm going to cut out some of these overtones here. Here's the last note of the song, or that portion. Okay, that song's ended. Overtones are gone. Now the new song. Okay, so I'm going to transition into those overtones. Actually, it's quite a bit of length on the overtones, so I'm going to take off some of that and then transition in. Okay, my thinking is right about here. Cut it. You don't have to be as precise as you do with cuts. And get rid of that. Cut it out. Now transition in like that. First note, I left, let's go back a little bit. I left some because, as I say, there's an audio fade in, and so you want to give some room to allow the computer, when it's figuring out how to do the transition, to give a little more volume to your first note. I probably should have had even more left in, but that's okay. So we transition that in a ways. I didn't like it, so first you have to move it there, line it up, then you can transition. You have to do it in 2 steps. There's a difference between getting that attack of the first note in the transition or after it with the sound. Let's try putting it right there, see how that sounds. So the attack of the first note of the next song is not in the transition. Let's listen to it. Took out the overtones. Relatively simple one. A little bit of a delay. I didn't want that because it is presenting this as a melody. But I'm just going to leave it that way. Okay, now I'm going to try a spot where I have a wrong note here. That's the corrected note over here. That's the wrong note there. Normally I would cut out a section and transition it over, or cut this entire thing. Cutting sounds better than transitions. Sometimes the transitions don't come out too well in the final result, but I'm going to show this just as an experiment. I'm going to cut it here, and then I'm going to move that correct note over to where the wrong note is. Let's listen to how it sounds first. So I got the note that failed. I repeated it over there with a better sounding note. And the way I'm going to do it is make an attempt in the transition to leave space before the lead-in note, the note you're adding, to give it some volume, because, as I mentioned, the transition is fading in this way and fading out that way. So you'll get less of a fade out with that note, but you'll get a stronger note there. It'll still be faded some, and you're going to be moving this stuff over here, so it's going to fade out more of the bad note. So that's a good spot to cut it. And now we're going to line up the bad note with the good note, like that. Sort of right at the peak of the attack of each would be the best spot, right about there. And let's put it in. Okay, let's hear how it sounds now. Put up the volume on that a little bit. Try it again. So it's not perfect by any means, but it's probably what I'm going to leave. Okay, you've seen some of the edits that I do when I make videos. I should mention that, repeat the fact that I'm not doing it to win a Grammy or come up with an absolutely perfect video. Just the best I can do on the shoestring budget concept, and also saving myself enormous amounts of time. I did some math on how many hours it takes for someone to prepare a 1-hour concert on classical guitar, something like 3 months of 6 hours practice a day, and I sight read through the material. I just did 10 hours of sight reading through a few books that I have, and I was I wanted to put that on. It's correct the mistakes quickly, and it ends up suboptimal. It'd be better to practice, the 3 months per song or per hour of the video, and I figure I calculated as about a 40-to-1 ratio of that's how much time I'm saving. So if I spend 1 year doing what I'm doing, that would be the equivalent of spending 40 years of trying to do it more perfectly. So I know I could do better if I wanted to put all the time into it, but there are shortcuts people can take, and if you're an amateur, then maybe that's the way you want to go. Although I see people like Elvis Presley, in his early movies, he made pretty good films, and then they found a director who said, I can do what you're doing in 6 months, and but I could do it in 2 weeks of shooting, and so the movies turned out not to be as good, but he still made his millions of dollars with it. So even the pros might come up with ideas like that. And then another comparison might be Stanley Kubrick versus someone like Charlie Chaplin. Kubrick would take 2 years to make the perfect movie, and Chaplin would crank them out, 5 a week or something like that. So it all depends on what you're looking for and what your goal is. Perfection is one goal that people go after, especially if they're trying to make money. But there are compromises. It's hilarious. In the one Elvis movie, they have the stand-in actor. You could see him when some dance routine. He turns around. He doesn't look anything like Elvis. But they said, oh, no one's going to ever notice. Let's just leave it in and save the video editor some time.